So I know y'all are probably either itching to leave or itching to ask questions, so we'll open it up to questions now. Yes, yes. You can address multiple priorities. I'm going to try to transition over here in a second to go sit down, but there is a burden associated with that. So as you address multiple priorities, you have to fulfill multiple criteria as well. So I would think about what makes sense for your proposal. You're not going to earn extra points by addressing multiple priorities, but you could compel the reviewers to think it's a more compelling idea if it makes sense for your proposal. But don't go out of your way to do something that doesn't make sense because you think you're going to get extra points by addressing all 4 priorities. We did not see any proposals in round 1 that were successful that addressed 4 priorities. I think the one that there were a couple that addressed 2 that logically made sense together and fit within the plan.
And this gets at what we've been talking about don't spread yourself too thin, don't make anything too fragmented, don't try to cover the whole waterfront. Address 1 or 2 priorities really well and really in depth instead of trying to get at all 4 of them at a very superficial level.
I wonder if you could elaborate a little on the distinction you're making between expanding existing programs, which we're hearing we don't want to do, but replicating programs, which we do want to do. So can you just help kind of make clear how you're seeing the difference?
I can start, and Lauren, you may want to add, or anyone can add. I wouldn't say we don't want to expand any programs. However, we don't want to come in as a grant period is ending and just pick up where they left off, because we by nature we're the innovation fund and we want to fund things that are different. If you're talking about expanding a program to reach a totally new population within the implementation site, that's one thing. If you're just talking about expanding the same old thing that's been there, even if it's a great old thing that's been there, that's not really what we're looking to do with the innovation fund money. Now, that may or may not answer that part of your question. To speak to the replication part, what we envision, and there's probably 1,000 ways to do this, and we'll leave it to you all to come up with a creative way to replicate a program, but if there's a great program in Clark County, and they've had great success, and there's a similar demographic in a very nearby district, those 2 districts could partner and share resources and talk about, and there's money in it for everyone, and there's incentives in it for everyone, but that's kind of what we envision for replicating an existing program. It gets to scalability, and so it hits a lot of marks. Does that answer your question?
Questions about partnership. Are there any restrictions on what types of institutions can be lead partners? And the second thing, is there any restriction on the number of proposals a given institution participates in?
No.
No and no.
To both. You can participate in as many projects as you want. I would just say don't submit the exact same thing with a little tweak on it maybe, yeah, but different ideas are definitely welcome. Mm-hmm.
I apologize if you already answered this question.
No, go ahead.
When you say we, what we're looking for, who's evaluating?
Who's the we? That's a really good question. So our structure is we have an advisory board. We review proposals at a staff level, so the governor's staff and our staff at OPB review proposals, and then we submit recommendations to the advisory board for funding. That's a board that Governor Deal appointed, and then they make the final recommendation to funding for him, and he's the ultimate decision maker there.
And just on a more micro level, what happens is every proposal is reviewed at least twice, but more than likely 3 or 4 times by 3 or 4 different reviewers. And after being reviewed individually and given an individual score on the rubric, those reviewers come together and discuss their scores and the rubrics they created, and they together create a jointly scored rubric, and that's the final rubric.
Is that, and that might be information shared, is that a big group? I guess the reason I'm asking, one of the presenters earlier said, and he wasn't really talking about the grant proposal. He said, I think it was actually Mr. Nate said, don't think about what we want, think about what they want. So I'm trying to figure out what the reviewers are so I can make a decision.
That's very strategic. I appreciate that. I mean, I would say it's a group of 10 to 15 people, and usually, I'm just giving you an idea of the process. It's the governor's staff and OPB staff, and they're all familiar with the Innovation Fund. They're all familiar with the priorities. We always score one together. We always discuss scoring criteria before anyone reviews individually, and so everyone's on the same page. And it's people who are familiar with Race to the Top and people who are familiar with the Innovation Fund in particular. So if you're looking for a target audience, that's your target audience. It's people who are familiar with the priority areas and are looking for alignment.
Yeah, but I think it's important to note it's the same people that are instructing you on what to put in your proposal. So I mean, it's us. It's not external people that aren't really familiar with the priorities of the Innovation Fund. So if that is helpful direction at all.
Getting back to that for a second, you said that a board, an advisory board makes final decisions. Who sits on the advisory board?
The advisory board makes recommendations to the governor, and we have an executive order. I can share that with you, but we may have one of our, is Ann Levette still here?
I think she may have.
She may have left, but Ann Levette is one of the people that sits on that board. I can name them all right now if you'd like. Eric Rosen from SunTrust, Dr. Charles Knapp, he used to be the president of the University of Georgia. Tom Lewis from Georgia State. Who else is on there? BJ Van
Gundy.
What is his job?
He's worked in the charter school industry as an advocate and a consultant for.
And Melanie Stockwell, who used to advise Eric Johnson, who was a candidate for governor, and now she's at the Georgia Department of Labor. I think that's all. There's 7 people on that board.
Are there any school folks on that board?
Yes, Chuck Knapp is.
No, I mean, like us. Yeah, school folks, like principals.
Oh, no.
No school level people. No school level, no teachers. Or principals.
No district people are on it. No. Well, that's a recommendation y'all are welcome to make to the governor, but that's who the governor appointed to that board. So, yes, sir.
And Mr. Bigmeyer said this too. Was there a PET score? I know we score. What was the PET score? Which the score would be?
To be successful.
I wouldn't say there's a cut score, but the scores ranged from, we had one proposal that received a 90, and it went all the way down, there was a gamut into the 30s was the low end. I would say the majority of proposals scored in the 60s and 70s, and there were a handful in the 80s, and the way it just happened to work out this time was every proposal that scored at or above an 80, we submitted to the advisory board, and they made recommendations for funding. Out of that pool, out of the 80 and above threshold. Now, I'm not saying that 80 will be the threshold this time, because we anticipate, of course, everyone's proposals will be that much better this round, and so maybe everyone will score above a 90, and in that case, there's not enough money to fund every proposal, and the threshold will be much higher, so we can't anticipate that. Let me get her and then you, okay?
Does the advisory board who makes the final decision also use the rubric, or is that a different kind of discussion? We evaluate on the rubric, and then they review all the rubrics, and then they have a discussion over which ones they want to fund. They don't score those separately.
No, they have all the information that we reviewed and submit to them.
They don't actually score any, and to your earlier point, a lot of the staff reviewers were former school level people, teachers specifically, like me.
I noticed it was $19+ million for this, and 5 were funded, so I'm assuming it's approximately $14 million left. You anticipate round 2 funding about 14. How many proposals should be done?
We haven't set an exact figure for what we're looking to expend in round 2. We want to leave room for round 3 as well, because we want anybody that got a planning grant in round 1 or round 2, we want to make room for them to apply again to actually implement their proposal in round 3. So we awarded 1 planning grant in this first round, and there may be others in the second round. So, but we expended about $5 million in the first round, so there is about $14 million left, and it's really just based on the quality of proposals that we receive in the second round. 73 proposals. Yeah, that's a really good question. There are guidelines for both teacher and leader effectiveness measures as well as teacher induction guidelines. And the guidelines are established through Race to the Top, and then there are committees that are actually working out the details of those. So when we see that people are interested in doing that, we kind of point you to the work of that advisory board, and we just want to make sure that the framework of your plan is generally aligned to that, and we understand that there's no way for you to possibly have the exact effectiveness measures or induction guidelines that are going to be used. We just want to make sure that there isn't an inherent conflict there. Yes.
Sort of a two-part, you mentioned the advisory group.
Mm-hmm.
Got everything around on that 80 or above.
Right.
That's the way it worked out. They weren't all funded, were they?
No.
Okay, so again, the cuts were not so much an issue.
No, the advisory board this time, there's just no way that the advisory board could review all the proposals that we received. So we have to review at a staff level and submit to the advisory board. This time that was just the feasible number was 80, and that was about 10% of the proposals that we received. So they looked at those and chose to fund 5 of those. There were 7 that received above 80 and went to that review board. But it may be different this time. We just have to see the number of proposals that we receive and what's feasible for them to review.
This is not intended to be a disrespectful question, but your advisory board seems like most of them are former members of the commission, Charter Schools Commission. That was a Florida region system, heavy group, and you couldn't help but notice that no career academies, no higher ed partners that were technical colleges, nobody from Priority 1 was awarded any funds in that. I think a lot of people in the state are concerned, is there a bias towards the university system, or whether it's not sufficiently.
Right.
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and a lot of the proposals that we received that were successful in round 1 had university partners, and I think that just speaks to the resources that they have available in terms of how to pull together a partnership quickly and how to write a grant really well.
I think to piggyback on Lauren's point, higher ed institutions are more accustomed to this kind of partnership, whereas I mean, and this doesn't necessarily get at your question about technical colleges, but especially for the business community aspect of it, higher ed institutions were able to draft or assist in the drafting of proposals that really created a good partnership dynamic, and maybe that it was lacking in other kinds of partnerships because, you know, sometimes people were asking private industry to partner in a way they weren't used to by being a fully engaged partner, and so I would not say that there was a bias toward higher ed proposals with higher ed partners. I will say that it just happened that maybe they had an advantage because they were able to put together a very well written proposal that included a partnership that was meaningful and engaged, and it was exactly what the Innovation Fund was looking for in round 1.
Yeah, well, and that's my follow-up to that is you did modify your Priority 1 3 points that you really want to stress, and all 3 need to be met, as I understand it, in Priority 1. Was that a result at the staff level at least, or maybe with this advisory board, y'all looked at it and said, you know, they're close, but they're not quite getting in, or, I mean, it obviously was a result of something.
Yeah, no, it is a result of that. We saw good ideas for Priority 1 this time, but we just felt like a lot of them were missing something, and we really want to make sure that it's encompassing all 3 of those measures. And we would love to see more proposals from career academies or technical colleges, and we think that they would be great partners to really address those things about really getting that third leg of that real world experience. So that's an important piece of that we want to make sure all of them are addressing.
On Priority 4, are the bond funds folks are allowed to ask for? Those come out of the 19.4?
No. No, that's something separate that Governor Deal set aside in his budget package last year, because we're not allowed to use Innovation Fund dollars for any kind of facility costs. So that would not come out of the 19.4.
Another, just one more thing, Russ, to your point, the large majority of proposals were for Priority 1. And so I guess by default, that was the most competitive area. We didn't intend it to be that way, but because, you know, out of 70, a large percentage focused on Priority 1, it turned out to be more competitive.
Are the rubrics, I mean, they were very useful on the rate of feedback, because that's when you disclose what your rubric was, what you were really looking
The rubric is aligned to what's in the RFP, so in that sense it is. I mean, it's not the exact way that it will be scored, but in terms of the point weights, it is aligned to what we put in the narrative section of the RFP.
And we should take this opportunity to really encourage everyone to give a long, hard look at the round 2 RFP, because there aren't a lot of changes, but there are some very important changes. You know, certain parts of the rubric, which are aligned to the scoring criteria, have been reweighted, or they've been adjusted. And so, you know, just take another look, give it another critical eye, because you may find some things that we tried to be clarifying at every point possible, based on things that seemed vague based on the proposals we got in round 1.
But my question was, section 2 used to be 25, now it's 10. Section 3 used to be what, 10, now it's 30.
Yes.
15, 30.
Yes.
So that's a major shift.
Right.
Our question is, you know, within that, okay, on say on B last time, you had 0 to 10, or half of it, and then 1 to 15 in the second half. But we didn't know that, because we were writing the application to do it when we saw the score. Knowing that it's very useful, is that obviously you changed those 2 sections. Do we know in advance how that breaks out within the 10 or 30 point scale?
Let us think about that. We didn't do it at the first round intentionally. The governor's office did not want us to do that. We'll discuss that with them and think about it for round 2.
And I can tell you specifically about innovation, there's always going to be a wide point range there, because that is one of the most important parts of your proposal, is how innovative your concept is and how well you articulate that concept. And so we're also not going to define innovation, because by doing so we automatically inhibit what is acceptable, and we create these parameters that we don't want to create. So I don't know about whether or not the details of how the scoring breakdown will be disclosed prior to scoring, but I do know you can count on a big range still in round 2 for innovation. I can tell you that.
Could I offer a practitioner's comment, if I may? I've been a part of 7 grants over the past 3-4 year period of time, and we won some and we lost some. And the one thing that I liked so much about this morning was what Joe had to offer, and Penny had to offer, and Cammie, you had to offer. The more you understand the purpose of a grant and what the grantor is attempting to do, what they hope to do. I heard the governor talk about looking beyond the horizon or over the horizon, and he used the mountain. He said, we want to look on the other side. And I very much believe that's what the innovation grant, the innovation fund is all about. Just recently I had the opportunity to meet with an investment banker who is the new president of the Wallace Foundation. And they are, as you know, a very large philanthropy. And we're very fortunate that we just got a very large grant from them. And he said something to me that really struck, it was like, wow, this really resonates with me. He says, you know what? Before today, you were an applicant. Before today, you were asking. He said, as of today, he said, you are my investment. He said, you're a part of my portfolio. And he said, so I want you to succeed. And so we started talking about that. So in some ways, I think about this innovation fund as an investment. And that, you know, from the governor's point of view and others, is that we would, what can we show that this investment can be scaled, that we can, as the governor pointed out, that we can replicate in other places. And I know we do a lot of things that we think are pretty good, but quite frankly, they won't work in other places. But there are other things that we do that I think can work. So I guess I would encourage you from at least whether you consider the number of grants I've written any evidence, but at least from somebody who's done some of this, that again, you would be well served to read and reread and really digest the request for proposal. I think that would serve you extremely well.
Yes, sir.
One more comment, as a segue with kind of what Russ was talking about. We appreciate an opportunity to apply. I'm just probably like everybody else. I thought we had the best grant proposal.
I know.
Everybody for us to get picked and all that.
I've been on the other side of it too, so I can relate to that.
I've been a part of a lot of grants, successful on a lot of them, and unsuccessful on some too. I'm with Tech, I'm the vice president of economic development for Motion Technical College. I'm also the chairman of the Board of Education at Sioux County. So I got a big investment in education. And I hope that the question that Russ had might bring up the discussion about a little diversity in the type of awards that are made. We just like I think somebody mentioned a while ago, we have 5 or 10 students in Sioux County that go on to Georgia Tech, University of Georgia Tech. We have about 150 here in Rural Georgia Tech. So, you know, we service that population probably a lot more than we do, you know, other things. So it just does bring an opportunity to discussions to make a little diversity.
No, I agree with that, and I think that that's something we want to see more of in round 2, and we were disappointed to not see as much in round 1. And y'all's proposal was good, and I hope that you will look at your feedback and be encouraged to apply again. But you know, we really want to encourage, when we're talking about that applied learning opportunity and the three-legged stool, about the real-world experience. We want applicants to look at their communities and what are the workforce development needs within their community, and how can you leverage the community partners there to really push students in the direction. So, you know, we know that not every student is going to go to Georgia Tech in Georgia. Not every student is going to go to UGA, but, you know, what are the workforce development needs there, and how can you get kids engaged in the careers that are available for them there so that they are going on to something successful, whether that is post-secondary success in a higher ed institution or a technical college, or they're going straight into the workforce. Thinking about that, this is not exclusive to going into a graduate degree program. We're not trying to push everybody to have a PhD or anything like that. So, yes, ma'am.
You just mentioned applied learning experiences, and about 3 of your speakers today have talked about the GIFT program, which is nothing but applied learning experiences
Yes,
for
ma'am.
teachers, because they don't get those in colleges come now. Tech has done a beautiful job implementing those, but in priority 1, you say you do not want applied, that's a new thing this go around, that you do not want applied learning experiences for teachers, but for students.
I wouldn't say we don't want them to be for teachers. If teachers can be involved in it, then that's great, but we just don't, we want it to focus on student experiences and not just teacher experiences. So a lot of what we saw in round 1 was, you know, we're going to give teachers this experience, and you know, they may bring it back to the classroom, but we really want student-centered experiences here. So it's not to say that the GIFT program isn't great. We know that it's valuable, but that's just what we're looking for within this. And I think that there are ways to marry those two things. But
Pretty much the basis of a lot of putting teachers with practice.
right, right. Other questions? Okay. Well, thank you guys for coming.
So much. I know we went way over time.
Yeah.
I hope that we answered all your questions.
And y'all have our contact info.